recognize a lot of your faces. Please turn off your phone and put it on silent, and then no recording of any portion of this.
Leave your phones on, actually.
Oh, you want the phone
Yep,
on?
phones
Okay.
on.
Okay.
Whoa. And out. Leave them on
And out. Okay. And at the end, if you would fill out the evaluation form before you leave and hand it to me. And if you need CU signed, just make sure you fill in what it is and the name of the person, and I'll sign it on your way out. Andre, to thank you for your contributions to this conference. The planning committee made a donation in your honor.
Oh, sweet.
So in appreciation of your contributions to the success of the 2016 NASAP conference, the donation has been made in your honor to fund a scholarship for next year's NASAP conference in Vancouver.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful,
So
wonderful.
thank you very much. And we'll
Great,
get started.
great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
So, just want to make sure that folks get handouts. Just 'cause I don't want folks to feel left out. Rapid City. Yeah, sweet. South Dakota. Wounded Knee. Let me turn off the music. Sorry, I was rocking out a little bit. So, my name is Andre Cohen, and I'm affiliated with the Adler Graduate School here in the Twin Cities. I first became aware of Adlerian psychology through some of my resilience work I was doing with college students at a proprietary college. Along that path, I get, Albert Bandera, is anyone familiar with? So his psychology kind of led me to Alfred Adler. And I want to be honest, some of the concepts I keep forgetting which are Adlerian and which are Drykerian. So if I confuse those two things, please forgive me for because sometimes I get them confused. So
Sure, I think we all agree.
oh, okay, good,
That's
good.
universal.
So something else that I also have to start each of my sessions with is this acknowledgement. I walk with certain privileges. I am cisgendered male, which means that how I identify as male and my physiology are the same. So I'm a cisgendered male. I am fairly well educated. I have a master's degree from St. Thomas, the University of St. Thomas, here in the Twin Cities, in education and curriculum and instruction. I teach at a number of colleges and universities. I would say I'm probably lower middle class, maybe, or working middle class. I don't know if that's a category, but we'll kind of talk about that today. I'm 6'2", and I'm mildly attractive, and extremely humble. And extremely humble. The reason I acknowledge those things is because if I don't acknowledge them, they could be used as a weapon. And so I don't want to take my privilege for granted, and I also don't want it to be a weapon. What that also means is that because I'm coming from a particular place with particular types of privilege, there may be some things that I don't see or that I don't understand because of where my privilege lies. And so if there are things or the way I use words or some concepts that certainly are coming from a place of privilege, and it's something that can help me grow or help this community of learners grow, please say something to me, all right? So help me grow, not as a professional, but as a human being. There are things as a male I didn't think about until my sisters gave me information that was helpful to me. The ideas of microaggressions or sexual harassment in microaggressions was something I hadn't even thought about until my sisters in the workplace gave me information that helped me become a better advocate. And while we're on that topic of this idea of privilege and talking about advocacy, what is an ally? What is an ally? How would you define that term?
Helpful.
Someone that is helpful, okay? Someone who's not from the group. So someone who is speaking up for the group.
Or using their privilege to pave the way.
Okay. Okay, so using their privilege to pave the way for other people who have privilege, who don't have privilege, or less privilege.
Someone with a similar goal.
Someone with a similar goal could be considered an ally. All right. Has anyone heard of a gentleman by the name of Dr. Dre? Okay, so lots of people have heard of Dr. Dre. Is Dr. Dre performing surgery? No, he's not performing surgery. Why is that?
He's not competent.
He's not competent?
Not his training.
What's not his training?
Surgery.
Medical surgery is not his training. But however, he is called doctor. Wouldn't one, so is he, do you think he's doing some philosophy? Maybe he is a PhD and not an MD. Is he conducting psychological research or doing any, has he published any peer-reviewed articles? Does anyone know? No, so he's not doing surgery and he's not publishing peer-reviewed articles. And why is that? Why is he not doing surgery and why is he not publishing peer-reviewed articles? Just give me one. He's not, but he's called Dr. Dre.
That's the way you understand doctor.
So how do you understand Dr. McGee?
Something he likes to call himself.
Oh, wait a minute. He is Dr. Dre because he what? He calls himself Dr. Dre. Does anyone else recognize his credentials?
Don't know his credentials, either the way he's defining it for himself.
Does anyone recognize, if he walked into the room, you need your spleen taken out, and Dr. Dre walks into the room, what are you going to say? Hopefully you're out. What are you going to say? No way. Why?
Because he's not trained.
He's not medically trained. There is no medical institution that has given their stamp of approval for his doctorship. There are no peer-reviewed articles. There's no institution that gave him this mantle. He calls himself doctor. Why am I going down this long rabbit trail? Oftentimes, we call ourselves allies, but nobody else calls us an ally. Who would call you an ally? Why would someone call you an ally?
Felt helped.
They felt helped. What else? They feel understood. What's that? You're with them. You're on their side because they can see your work, right? They can see that you're part of a cause, you're part of something that is moving forward. And so one of the things that oftentimes happens, particularly in these conversations where we're talking about the uplifting or at least we're trying to scientifically diagnose marginalized communities is that people will say, I am an ally. But the people in the group that you're an ally for don't know your name. They can't vouch for your allyship. And so I would encourage us, until other people can call us an ally, to think of ourselves as advocates. I'm an activist for. But I can't be an ally until someone else calls me that. All right? So just an introduction to the kind of thinking and the kind of work we're going to be doing in the time that we have. Hi, come on in. All right. So this workshop, we will explore the question, why are people still poor, so to speak? Because in the 60s, we had the war on poverty. Does anyone remember hearing that kind of language? The war on poverty. Lyndon Baines Johnson was the captain or spirited that conversation about the war on poverty. And so this is a picture of myself, my younger brother, and my sister. And so I'm Andre, that's William, and Crystal is the little bald-headed baby. And the funny thing is, Crystal didn't get hair until she was almost 3 years old. Like now she's got this long stuff, and it's hers. Like, and she doesn't need receipts to prove that it's hers, right? So it's always very interesting. So when I hear people talk about poverty, and I hear people talking about poor, I get really interested in that because I'm not exactly sure we know what we mean by that, right? So just so that we can familiarize ourselves with some of the concepts, and this is not a fair assessment. I want you to know that this is not fair. It's not fair at all. But we're going to do it anyway. So does anyone have one of those smartphones with them? All right. Okay, cool. So for those of you who have a smartphone, if you could get that smartphone out. And we're going to play a short game. I'm not sure if you can. Yeah, there we go. So what I'd like for you to do is to go to your internet browser and type in Quizlet Live, Quizlet.live. Yeah, oh, if you have a laptop, that's great too, right? I think so, but I don't know.
It's AT&T.
Yeah, I'm not getting people's names or numbers or anything like that. So yeah, I'm not, yep. So yep. So when you get to Quizlet Live, and if you have a phone and you can participate, that would be great because the way that the stuff will work you'll see in just a second.
We'll put in that number then.
Yep. So put in that join code, which is 490850.
Can I trust it with my name?
Yeah, and if you want to use a dummy name, as long as you remember what I don't mean dummy, but if you want to use, a nondescript name or something else, that's fine. Great. Oh, cool. So Pomey, Scott, Pam, Amber, David, Cassie, Corgi Mom. Great. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. Cool. So I have some. So what is going to happen next? And if you're, we'll wait for a couple more other people. And if you don't have a phone or you don't want to participate in that way, if you can sit next to someone else, because you can work with them as we go through this. All right. So I'm going to hit create game, and what is about to happen next is that the system will divide you into teams. So each of these names will be divided into teams. And it looks like probably teams of probably 3 or 4, given the fact that there are 12 people registered. So if you can find the folks in your team, we'll do that before we get started. All right? What's that? It's going to tell you. So I'm going to hit create game, and all the team names will appear on the screen. Okay. All right. Oh, so we have 3 teams of 4. So we have the zebras, and why don't we have the zebras meet here? We can have the alligators meet here, and then the sea turtles can meet back by Bill in the back. So zebras right here, alligators right here.
The reason I sit here,
Yeah, I'll go too. It'll be easy to.
Oh, then we come back for you to discuss.
Yes, ma'am.
Zebras here.
Yep. So zebras here, alligators here, sea turtles right back here.
Okay.
Alligator?
Oh, you have.
Okay.
All right. So what's going to happen next is I'm going to start the game. Each of you, there will be a question that will be a common question, but each of you will have different answers. And so your objective is to try to guess the best answer. When you move forward, so when you're successful, you will move forward. You'll see your scores in just a second. And if you miss one, you go back to 0. All right? So you progress, and I think the number that we're looking for is 850, which will probably, you'll see it as a 10 as the horse race begins. All right? So I'm going to hit start the game, and again, this is an unfair game. I want to say that. You don't know the answers to this stuff, so cut yourself some slack. Okay?
As a team?
As a team. Yep. So it's all the zebras, all the alligators, and all the sea turtles. All right. So here we go. Are you guys ready?
Are we all supposed to get the same answer?
So we're working together.
So look on your thing. You have the same question, different answers. So all the team members have different answers, but the same question. So you have to talk among your team as to which one you think is the right answer. Oh, alligators are out front. Way to go. They got the first answer correct. Oh, zebras have now caught up. So you have these 3 answers. She has 3 answers. She has 3 answers. So we have one question. All have different answers to choose from. So all of you have to decide which is the correct answer.
I think one of us. One of us.
That's right.
Yeah.
One of you has the correct answer. All of you have the answer.
Yeah. So what questions do we need?
Any other answer?
So alligators just had a wrong answer.
What if he has the right answer?
Yeah.
I think it's oh my God, no, you're crazy.
How many?
I'm sorry. That's a lot. Okay.
We go back to 0. Oh, the sea turtles got it.
The correct answer
Way to go, zebras. Way to go, sea turtles. Go sea turtles. Oh, alligators catching up. Oh, alligators. Way to go, sea turtles. Alligators. Alligators are in the lead.
Okay, there we go.
Alligators are 2 points away. One point away, alligators. Oh, I thought it was. It's 12. So 2 points away. Way to go! Game over. All right, let's do
Should we stay with our team?
If you'd like to, you can.
Over there.
Great. Thank you so much for playing that. I know that there was a level of frustration and a learning curve, so thank you so much for persevering through that learning curve.
Now phones go off?
Yeah, you can turn your phones off or turn them down, whatnot. We won't be using them again. So thank you so much. So why do you think we started out with that game? Why do you think we started out with that game?
would say get our minds in the frame of what we're going to be discussing.
Okay, to get your minds in the frame of what we're going to be discussing,
Great teamwork.
to create teamwork, okay,
Also get some facts.
to actually get some facts, right? Yeah, yeah. A lot of times we enter these kinds of conversations with hearsay or rumors or things that we think or our personal experiences. And one of the things that we know from our personal experiences is that those things are limited. Our personal experiences are limited because of a lot of things, and we'll talk about some of those things. We'll let me skip this. So when we talked about this idea, it was the medium income of the 1% kind of folks. Was that?
The answer to Bill Gates' hourly.
That's Bill Gates's hourly rate. There are 22 million people in the capitalist class, as the article I took this from kind of talks about. Yeah. We'll go through some of the stuff again in just a second. I'll show you the. I really like this tool. I use it in my undergraduate classes and my graduate classes because it lets them have fun doing the game. So we'll just kind of go over some of the. Oh no, let's go. Go back here. Go to print. And we'll do glossary. So there were about 70 words that we would talk about in my classes. We go through all of the concepts and all that kind of stuff. So I will and have this available for you as a part of this presentation. The biggest part that I think is very interesting is the conversation that we typically have around poverty and welfare. And I think it's very interesting that the Department of Justice talks a lot about this idea of poverty and gives us some numbers that are very interesting. So for Black Americans who receive welfare, and welfare is a number of different programs, but welfare is about 39%, which is significant, but is not everyone, right? And so typically, what does the face of poverty look like? I mean, we see it in the news, you see it on printed, yes.
I think a lot of it depends on where you live. I live in South Dakota,
Yeah,
so the face of poverty looks like
native.
the Indian reservation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yes.
I'm from Africa, I grew up in part of the country, so I know it's my personal advantage. When we talk about poverty, I just can't picture how it looks like.
Yeah,
It's like
it's so different. And where in Africa are you from?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Yeah, no, it certainly looks different, right?
Poverty here is like middle class in my country. When I was a child, so
Okay.
having a car at home.
And where is your country?
Turkey.
In Turkey. Yes.
My family's from Greece, and I was talking to some Greek relatives once, and I was explaining to them that the vast majority of people living in poverty in the United States are white, and they have no reference to that. Is how can you be poor and white in the United States?
Yeah, how can you be poor and white in the United States? And it's very interesting that so poverty in the United States looks different than it does in other parts of the world. And we'll also look at some of those gaps in privilege and in wealth in just a second. But to that point, to Joe's point, how many people have either heard someone say or heard about someone saying that they suffer from reverse discrimination? Has anyone heard
Oh
someone
my God.
say, right, okay, so either you've heard someone say that or you've heard someone say that they've heard someone say that, right? What is that?
A myth.
It's a myth. Stephen, why are you laughing and why are you saying that that is a myth?
Well, because even on their worst day,
Uh-huh,
they're not poor,
okay,
or they don't experience poverty.
okay, so even on their
Yeah.
worst day, the people who are saying
Yeah, the
those,
people are saying, even on their worst day, they don't have a clue.
they don't have a clue, okay? What's that?
I don't think that's fair.
Which is not a fair statement.
That even on their worst day, that they don't know what it is to be poor or be discriminated because it does happen.
Okay, what does happen?
There are people who would, be considered like in the privileged class, and the fact that they are probably gives them some difference, but it doesn't mean that they are more than the person who is talking to, the person who is interacting.
Okay,
It doesn't necessarily mean that.
okay, so now let's go back, yes,
Well, I'm just gonna throw it out here, but maybe poverty needs to be defined. Because based on the families that I work with, which are mostly, well, seems like the education level determines the poverty.
yeah,
Association between the education, I mean, I see the families where the mom and dad didn't graduate high school, they're impoverished because they don't have that education and everything that goes with it.
so there's an intersectionality of where poverty and education play, right? So there's some kind of thing, and we're going to talk about that because that's an important point. So thank you for bringing that up. I want to go back to this idea of reverse discrimination, though. I want to get back to that because that's oftentimes what people will say as the root of their not being able to make it, as opposed to what needs to be talked about. So when people say reverse discrimination, what do they mean? What are they saying?
Well, I hear it because I have some Native students in our program. And for non-Native students, we'll often say, well, Native students go to school for free.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the truth.
It's not the truth.
I mean, they pay the same tuition that everyone else does, but they say, and then they'll say, and because of that, I have to work harder or I'm reversely discriminated.
Okay, cool. Yes.
Well, I think the cliche reverse discrimination statement is because of affirmative action, they hired the minority person over there.
Okay. Yeah. That they hired the minority person over me. That's what people typically say, right? Or I did not get the opportunity because they gave it to someone who is less deserving than me because they fit a social category that they need for a quota. Anyone heard that kind of argument or conversation? Okay, cool. So first, let's look at this linguistically, this idea of reverse discrimination. Discrimination can be both a noun and a verb. Is that correct? That it is both a noun and a verb. So, are there such things as reverse nouns? Is there a such thing as a reverse chair? No, there is no reverse chair. Now, I can jump again, but can I unjump? No, because that would be, so that would be me, yeah, so I can't reverse jump. So first of all, when people say reverse discrimination, they're coming from faulty logic because linguistically, that doesn't make sense. Because discrimination is in fact just what? It's just discrimination. So that's the first thing. The second thing, has anyone ever applied for a job that you did not get? Please raise your hand if you applied for a job that you did not get. Okay, cool. When you did not get that job, how were you notified that you did not get the job? So you got an email. In some cases you never heard, right? Sometimes you get an email, sometimes you might get a phone call. how does that letter, what does that letter sound like? We regret to inform you that you're not getting the job. What's that? We chose another candidate. What else?
The position has been filled.
The position has been filled. Yeah, although your qualifications were impressive, we went with another candidate, right? My favorite is, we've gone another direction with this position. You ever gotten that, right? Now, I find that interesting. So do you think getting those letters is unique to us? No. Do you think that they give those letters to all the people that they reject? I mean, it's some form of that letter, right? Probably, right? Or no letter at all, right? So now I'm wondering, how is it that the people who are denied jobs because they gave it to a minority, they gave it to a woman, they gave it to an undocumented immigrant, how do they know? How do they know?
They don't.
And so the answer is simply, they don't. And so one of the things we have to do is we have to get people to think about the trappings of the system. Because if we entertain that conversation without having people critically think about what they're saying, then we are enabling this system of oppression. We're enabling it. I work with a school in Madison, and these kids, their high school tuition was more than my undergraduate tuition, right? And so how do I teach them or talk about diversity with the most privileged folks? I talk about it in saying, sometimes you're king of the hill, and sometimes you're not. And it has little to do with all of your privilege and your efforts. Sometimes it's just a roll of the dice. And so when we have those conversations with people, that conversation, because it's built on faulty premises, and it's not healthy for the espousing those thoughts or those ideas. What we also have to listen to, their core hurt. There is a hurt that they're trying. For whatever reason, it is my belief that this current political cycle of those hurts that have not been attended to. And so they're manifesting themselves in some ways that people go, I would have never thought that this would turn out this way. This is such a surprise. Where did this dark horse come from? Well, it came from all the resentment of people who felt that they weren't being heard, listened to, and attended to. And so we have to go through the cycle so that we can have better conversations with each other, particularly around this particular issue. So we're going to continue on. So when we talk about this idea of poverty versus the poor, I think it's very interesting. So this picture was taken in Olin Mills studio. Anyone old enough to remember Olin Mills studio? That's where everybody took their family pictures, at Olin Mills studio, right? And we missed the ones in the 80s where people had the fade over stuff, with the two express, all that stuff. We missed all those. So this is a very classic. And if you notice, I don't know if you noticed, but my bow tie is rather large. It's a rather large bow tie. And I'm wearing some kind of tunic type thing, right? Well, these were our Easter pictures. And I'm proud to say that my mom made those outfits for us. So she sewed those outfits for us. And I believe that she had an adult pattern, which is why the bow tie is so large, right? So it's made for. What's that?
Your brother's.
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, right. So she made those outfits for us, and I find it interesting. So I serve on the board of a place called. It's a community action program. Is anyone familiar with community action programs? So, anyone? No? Okay, cool. So I serve on the board of a community action program, and they oversee a program called Head Start. And so I'm new to, when I was new to that board, and I've been on there about 7 years, when I was new to that board, we started talking about this Head Start stuff, and I was like, oh, Head Start is cool. We do some really wonderful things. And it really started sounding familiar. So I was talking with my mom, and I was telling her about this Head Start thing and all this stuff. And I said, Mom, this sounds so familiar. It's so funny. And she starts laughing. And she says, and I'm like, Mom, why are you laughing? She said, boy, you were in Head Start. And I say to her, Mom, we were that poor? See, I didn't know that we were poor. And I love this picture because there's a reason why my mother made our clothes. Because that was less expensive than going out and buying new suits. So my mother made those clothes. And so when we talk about this idea of why are people poor or what's going on with poor people, I think it's absolutely important for us to reframe how we talk about that. Because although my family did not have a lot of money, we were never poor. We may have gone to thrift stores to get clothes, but my mother would take those clothes, she would wash those clothes, press those clothes until they looked new. We would get shoes from thrift stores, and my dad and my grandfather showed us how to buff and shine those shoes until you could see yourself smiling in the shoe. Why? Because we didn't have a lot of money, but we were never going to be poor of character. And so when we talk about this idea of poverty versus being poor, we have to be very strategic about and purposeful about how and why we talk about those things. And so this idea of poverty, that's a governmental tool. And go ahead.
I'm part of Lebanon now because I'm a student. That income people like.
Yeah, she says
I don't feel that, but.
Yeah. She says she's in poverty currently because she's a student, right? It's a government order. And so what we have to also recognize is that people are constantly adapting to the environments in which they find themselves in. And so poverty is an organizing tool used by governments to define how people get resources. But we'll talk more about that too. So I want to talk, the other thing is that when we talk about this idea of the poor versus poverty, in both of those situations, when we use the word poor and we use the word poverty, who are we talking about? We're talking about people. We're talking about people. Are people poor? No, people are not poor. A baby born with spina bifida. A baby born with a cleft palate. A baby born to a psychotherapist. What do they all have in common? Their humanity. They are born perfect who they are. So you cannot be born poor or impoverished. You're responding to an impoverished system. So when we typically talk about the poor, we talk about poverty, we talk about the people, but we never talk about the system that created this place where these people are. So we'll keep going. I got like 75 slides to get through. So, truths about human beings. Human beings can learn, change, and grow, even when we don't see the evidence of it. It's still true, even if we don't see evidence of it. There are tons of behaviors I had as a teen that my parents were like, I wish he would change that. They didn't see the evidence, but I now buy my own shoes and my own clothes. So now they can see the fruit of that, right? People do what they think works, even when what? Even when it doesn't work. But why do they do it if it's not effective? Because it's all they know. It's all they can do. They have no resources. It's comfortable. They're discouraged. Has anyone seen a kid fall out in one of those big stores? You know, Target or Walmart or grocery store. And it usually happens like in either the candy aisle, the toy, or something like that, right? Why do you think the first time the kid has done that? Right? No. Does the kid typically, in your view, when that happens, do they get what they want in that particular, in the situations that you've seen repeatedly? Have they always gotten what they wanted? So from what you've seen, they've gotten what they wanted. Other folks? No? Okay. So why are they exhibiting that behavior? So it's clear that they're exhibiting the behavior because they got it before. And so now the child is confused as to why they're not getting it now. And when will their behavior change? That falling out behavior? When the adult responds differently.
When it doesn't work.
When it doesn't work, but in some cases it's already not working. When they become an adult, I've seen adults fall out. I've seen some adults with, right? When they recognize that behavior is no longer helping them to achieve their goals. And sometimes people are 30 before that happens, right? And you know, Adrian Peterson got caught up in this particular concept, right? He missed something with this particular concept. And Mr. Adrian Peterson is a football player for the Minnesota Vikings. And he had to take administrative leave for a year. I think it was last year or 2 years ago. And is anyone familiar with why he had to take an administrative leave? Yes.
Because of his use of corporal punishment.
Because his use of corporal punishment. Yep. And on the street, they would just say he was whooping his kid. I don't know how you spell whooping, but that's what they would say. And Mr. Peterson is relatively articulate, and he was able to really speak intelligently about why he used the form of discipline that he did. And what was his rationalization? Because that's what his dad did to him. But what did Mr. Peterson fail to realize? That he had choice. What else? Yes. That punishing the kid is not helping him. Okay, so he didn't see that it was changing his behavior. All right.
The norms had changed.
That the norms had changed. That what was acceptable when he was growing up is certainly not acceptable now. And a 2-year-old. And this is how I discipline her. You sit down there, young lady. This hurts me more than it hurts you. Okay. Right? She's got more timeouts than anything, right? And it's so funny because now when she cries uncontrollably, particularly when she's throwing a tantrum, we say, go to your room. And guess what she does? She picks up Elmo and her blanket and she trots off to her room and sits down. I would have never thought that would work. It's certain, I don't think it would have worked with me, but different context, right? So context is everything. All human behavior is goal-directed. Attitude is a reaction to a goal. And oftentimes, particularly when we're working with clients, we get caught up in their sideshows, right? We get caught up in their sideshows. And so an attitude is a reaction to goal. So what determines an attitude? Value. As a preacher's son, And on Sunday, we go to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We stop at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So Friday night, I asked my dad for the car. My dad loves me. What does he say? He says, yeah, take the keys. So I take the keys. I'm hanging out with my friends. We're looking for girls. I don't know what would have happened had we found girls, but we're just cruising. I come home before curfew. I fill the car up with gas. And my dad says I have what kind of an attitude? A what?
Entitlement.
An entitlement attitude? Maybe. What does he say about my attitude?
Good attitude.
That I got a good attitude, right? I'm home before curfew. Car's filled up. No problems. Sunday. My best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sunday? Church all day. But I'm 17. I'm invincible. And Jesus is my friend. So I go to my dad and I say, Dad, can I borrow the car? What does my dad say? Not only does he say no, but he gives me the hell sermon. In our household, the worst consequence you could ever suffer was going to hell. And either you could go to hell on your own or my dad would show you the way. As a result of that interaction, what would I say about my dad's attitude? Same thing. It's a negative attitude. What would you say about my attitude? It's a negative attitude. What determines the attitude? Goal accomplishment. So when you have a person with an attitude, what do you know about them for sure? They want to achieve something. There's something that they want to achieve that they're not achieving. And so as a helper, what becomes my responsibility? To help find out what it is that they want to achieve. What's the easiest way to help someone change their attitude?
Give them a realistic goal.
Give them what they want. Give them what they want. And it's so funny, as helpers, what that doesn't mean is that we have to give people what they want the way. I was a teacher, high school teacher, had a kid that acted up in the back of the class. Constantly this so-called power struggle in the classroom, taking attention away from me and from the lesson. Until I got hip to his game. So I started saying, Dartrell, can you come up here for a second? I need for you to write up the notes for today's lesson. Here you go, Dartrell. So Dartrell's up on the board. Dartrell, can you take attendance for me? Yeah, go ahead. Dartrell, can you collect the homework assignments for me? Dartrell, since you're helping me out so much, it might be easier for you if you sat right next to me. What did I give Dartrell? I gave him the attention he wanted, but I didn't give it to him how he wanted it. And the interesting thing is, so I could have consistently been in this so-called power struggle, but what I did was I took his power and used it for my good. Because once I got Dartrell, guess who else I got? I got the whole class back, right? I got the whole class back. The leader's important, but the first follower is more important. Right? So that all human behavior is goal directed towards significance, belonging, and safety. Significance, I'm a person with purpose and power. I can do something. Belonging, I need to be in relationship with people who understand my significance. And lastly, I want to be physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally safe to be in relationships with people who understand my significance. Because when we understand those things, then we can ensure the safety of the human soul. The human soul. What is the most valuable, non-renewable resource on the planet? Love, water, acceptance. non-renewable. You! You! The human soul! Governments have been created to capture and harness the power of the human soul. Religions have been developed to help funnel and focus the power of the human soul. Marketers spend lots of time trying to figure out how you can trade your soul for their product. The human soul. And so when I think about the soul, I think about my grandmother and her passing. And it was very interesting to me to really sit back and kind of look at the process that we went through for her transition. That's the word we like to use for death. Transition, right? And it's very funny to me that we spent a lot of money on this box. And it's got, eagle claws and gold inlay and pearl, so it's just very lavish box. And then they put my grandmother in some clothes that she typically wouldn't have worn in real life. And they put way too much makeup on my grandmother. And they did not put her wig on correctly, right? Because she liked to have her tag in the front. And so I'm looking at this, and so as people were coming up, and so we had this ritual where she would be in the front of the room and people would come up and they would pay their last respects. And so people are saying things to my grandmother, they're passing notes to my grandmother, and you have one creepy family member who wants to touch the body, right? You're like, get away. Grandma didn't want you touching her in life. Don't touch her in death, right? How is my grandmother responding to all of this information? She doesn't care. She doesn't hear. She's not responding. Why? Because she's dead. She's not there. The body is there, but she's not. And then afterwards, we would go to her house and we would have spaghetti dinner. We get the photo albums out and we're reminiscing, and people are telling lies about my grandmother, and we're laughing and joking, and it feels as though my grandmother is there. But her spirit can't animate anything. And so when the body and the spirit become separate, the body becomes a thing. The spirit becomes powerless. It has power, but not as much as it does when it's connected to the body. I remember in the 80s, book that just kind of went, we would call it now viral, right? And it was a book by a gentleman by the name of Alex Haley. And his book was titled Roots. Does anyone remember that? Okay, so Roots, and or Roots, as my grandmother would say. And so they also had a TV miniseries, which I think is quite impressive because it came on for 2 weeks for 3 hours a night. And I'm not sure how you can call that a miniseries, but that's what they called it, a miniseries, right? And I remember one of the opening scenes, and my parents wanted us to see it because they felt that it was important, but they also wanted to protect themselves. And so I don't know if any of your parents would do this with television programs. You'd be watching the television program or the movie, and they would say, "Cover your eyes." Anyone ever experience? Okay, yeah. And so it would be certain parts, and she'd say, "Cover your eyes," and so we would go like this, right? So I think that was more to protect my parents than it was actually to protect us. But there's an opening scene where they capture this young man from West Africa, and they have him in these stirrups, and they're conditioning him for the economic system of slavery. And so the conditioner has this kind of medieval lashing thing. And so they have the young man, and the young man is played by LeVar Burton, the Reading Rainbow guy, right? Take a look, it's in a book, a reading rainbow, I can. Okay, you know what I'm saying, right? And also the Star Trek dude, right? He was blind, but that's weird, right? So like he's the future, but he's blind. Anyway, right? So that they have him in stirrups, and so the conditioner hits him. And he goes, "Ah!" And he says, "What is your name?" And LeVar Burton says, my name is Kunta Kinte." And the conditioner says, no, your name is Toby. And so this continues. So finally, the conditioner is out of energy. The young man is limp, and he hits him this one last time, and no whimper. And he says, what is your name? And the young man says, my name is Toby. What happened? He lost his spirit. What happened? He surrendered his identity. He lost his body's strength, which led to powerlessness. They turned him from a human being into a thing. And what do we call that thing? A slave. A slave. Now, the interesting thing for us to recognize is if we're not careful, those same things could happen to us. But instead of lashes, we get commercials. How many people have seen a commercial that actually makes you feel better about being human? You see tons of those? Pretty rare and far in between, isn't it? Because most commercials are telling you how inadequate you are without their product. Get this and it will complete you. Drink this, smoke this, do this, go there, buy this, spray this, and you'll be complete. And so, talk about this idea of poverty and poor people. If we're not conscious of maintaining the human soul, we will turn them into and with things. We're not careful with things. Right? Where are white people from? Europe? Where in Europe? Caucasia. Where is Caucasia? It's a mountain range in Georgia. Yes. From Ethiopia. Where are black people? No, we got you. No, we know where everybody comes from. Where do black people come from? Africa? Ethiopia. So if black people come from Ethiopia, what are they called? Human beings. You come from Ethiopia. You're a human being. And what else are you called?
By my name. They don't call me Black in Africa.
Whoa. So in Africa, they don't call you black.
No, because we are all alike.
Because you're all alike. Oh.
But I'm black here.
But you're black here, but back in Africa, you're not black. You
Then
are.
How can I identify with ethnicity of
So ethnicity is different. Here's my point. There is no place on the planet called black. Nigeria doesn't count for this conversation. Likewise, there also is no place called white. Those are constructs designed to make us think like things. Make us think like things. So we'll continue. I was going to talk about the cultural competence continuum stuff, but we'll flip through that. Context is everything. Context is everything. Context is everything. Kangaroos. Why do we not have kangaroos in North America? Because why are they in Australia? Because of the oceans. All right. Why do we not have monkeys and I don't, Bigfoot doesn't count, right? Why do we not have monkeys in North America? It's too cold. Why is Florida in one of the few places in the United States, not including the U.S. Virgin Islands, where we have tropical birds? Because of the ocean? In the winter, okay. In the weather. Things that we do differently in Minnesota than they do in Florida on January 1st. Why? Because of the weather, right? Context is everything. And so when we talk about geographic context, that's important. When we talk about time, as a part of context, that's important. Some of you may have had family members that called Brazil nuts by another name. People know what I'm talking about? No? Yes? Anybody know what a Brazil nut is? Okay, so lots of people don't know what a Brazil nut is. So it is it's probably about 1 inch long, maybe 2 inches long, and it's shaped like a toe. Like a toe, or I've never seen a toe shaped like that, but it's certainly shaped like an orange wedge, right? Like an orange wedge, and it's wooden, and it's really, really hard. And so what people in the old days called that was nigger toes. So they would use that term, nigger toes. And if people use that today, what do we say to them? What's that? Oh, we might say that that's racist.
Politically incorrect.
Or it's politically incorrect. We say it's not nice. We say we call them African American toes now. That's a bad joke. Don't you tell it. Don't you tell that joke. All right. Context is everything. So context. So why do we dress the way we dress? Context. Why do we relate the way we do? Context. Context is everything. So when we talk about this idea of poverty, we have to recognize that all too often people have talked about the culture of poverty. Has anyone ever read any of those pieces or studied those pieces, right? They talk about the culture of poverty, but they don't talk about the context of poverty. Culture is a side effect, or is the response to the adaptation to the context. So if I don't understand the context, and even in, so part of the reason I was going to talk about that cultural competence model is because it lacks. Anyone been to cultural competence trainings and that kind of stuff? What they typically lack is the context by which those cultures are coming from. Because if you don't understand the context, I can look at what people do, but if I don't understand why they do it, or the context that they were adapting to, then I miss the meaning behind why they do what they do, even if I know what they do. So when we talk about context, we have to talk about this idea of culture and how that relates. And so anyone heard of or used the iceberg theory of culture? Anyone seen that? Okay, cool. I used it for a long time, but then I couldn't, it wasn't organic enough for me. And so I needed something that was more alive than an iceberg. And so to this idea of the cultural carrot. And there are two pieces to the carrot. There is the top part. And what do you call that? What do you call the top part of the carrot? The greens? Okay, so we'll call it the greens. And then there is the orange part, which is the carrot, the root, right? What does the root do for the green part, for the top? So it gives it life. It provides nutrients from the ground to the greens. Is that right? What do the greens do for the root? So absorb the sunlight, provides food to the roots, right? So there's a symbiotic relationship between those two things. Now, what happens if one of those pieces is not doing their job? What happens to the culture, so to speak? It is going to die, right? So there's a symbiotic relationship between the two things. And so what I like to offer you is that the part of culture that we can see, we will call artifacts. So that's, you know, a woman wearing a hijab, or Hmong people wearing their Hmong attire, or Native Americans wearing jingle dresses during powwows, or so forth and so on. So artifacts are directly related to values. So when we see values, we actually values manifested. All right. I spent way too much time on some stuff. So when we talk about this idea of wealth and the distribution of wealth, what we're actually talking about is the gap between the people who have the most in a particular society and the people who have the least. And so this idea of poverty looks different. India's poverty looks different than that of the United States, although we can have dramatically more poverty, so to speak, in the United States. It just looks different given where the starting points are in the economic systems that people are operating in, right? So, so there's that. So I'm going to get to what I'd like to suggest is that in my belief system, the earth was made in 6 days. The creator rested on the 7th, which meant anything created on the 8th day was created by whom? Human beings, by us, right? That's my belief system. I submit that to you because there's an interesting link between this idea of poverty and education. The other part of that would be race as well. How are public schools funded? Taxes to property tax. So in more affluent areas, what is the tax base like? It's higher, which means the schools get what? More money. More money per pupil. What happens in lower or depressed areas? Less money, less resources. So when we talk about this idea of poverty and we talk about education and how those things are related, what we don't talk about are the systems that keep perpetuating this inequity. And so housing is one of those. So when we get to the rest of the 7 deadly sins, this idea of poverty, middle class, possessions, money, and food, that in poverty, if we look at possessions, the most valuable possession is family. They can't afford those kids. Why do they keep having them? Because they're important to them. That is their investment, right? For possessions, in terms of middle class, it is the collection of things, making sure I have a safe home, a good home, and a good neighborhood. For people in wealth, it's about uniqueness. I will have one-of-a-kind purse or one-of-a-kind, this kind of thing. Lastly, when we talk about this idea of motivation, poverty, people in poverty, their motivation is survival. In middle class, it's about hard work, job. And with people in wealth, it's about furthering points. I'm going to skip to the good stuff.
You're about 1 minute left.
All right, got 1 minute, and I'm going to knock it out the park. So 7 deadly sins. So the first deadly sin is this idea that we are maternalistic or paternalistic, that we are the parent, we know better, we can help those people. When in fact, what we need to be doing is being goal-oriented and helping them tease out their own goals and expectations. We think that we know more. We think that our degrees are actually to help us. It is to give the information to our clients so they can make better choices. That's why we have our degrees. The more you look, the more you find. And oftentimes, when we look at problems and we spin the spiral where people can't find a way out. We say that we're the government, we're here to help. One of the things I think is very interesting is that the DSM, although it is a helpful tool, it is a menu of services. And purely just a helpful tool. And so oftentimes we use those things in appropriately. The thing that we also have to recognize is that we get paid off of poverty. So when people, when neighborhoods are set up because other people are in poverty, don't live in that neighborhood, so pay the same money, pay double the money for the same square footage over this neighborhood over that one. Typically, we don't challenge the system because the system has convinced us that we are powerless to do anything about it. Lastly, we typically, particularly with people in poverty, we beat people up with the rules. We make them jump through hoops that sometimes aren't necessary to do in order to help them gain access to liberation. In my last 30 seconds, here. There's a book I would suggest that you spend some time with by Parker Palmer. Oh, there it is. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Parker Palmer or not, but practices of the circle of trust approach from his book called The Hidden Wholeness. And once we employ a number of those concepts to lift themselves up, what the worst thing we can do is give particularly people in poverty or our clients in general false hope. False hope said you can do anything you want to do. How many of us have heard that or may have even you can't be anything you want to be? You can, however. And so when we give authentic hope, we give tools, we give resources, we give action plans to people, take out barriers that only complete lives. The most valuable resource, the human soul, and it is our job to reconnect people with themselves. My name is Andre Cohen. Thank you so much for your time.
I'll take your evaluation forms as you walk out.
You mentioned Madison, that you were with Madison Community Center. Do you know anything about the Odyssey Project in Madison? It's with the University of Wisconsin. And it's helping those in poverty. They work with them individually. It's so hard to explain in a nutshell. But my son is the assistant director. So he had asked me to get some information, come and meet with them, because they get about 30 students from the community that are recommended to them. They spend from September to May with them 3 hours a week, and they end up with 6 hours of humanity credits. They go through all kinds of readings. It's not an easy gift. You work with them, it's wonderful, and encourage them. They have scholarships that they try to get for them to move on. They want to know, they're like struggling with some boundaries, helping people be motivated themselves, kind of what you have to say, like that, honoring that.
This is what I'll say. There's a guy named Jeffrey Canada.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you notice how happy like this right now, but this is what
Okay.
People say, well, isn't that writing kid? Yes. Isn't that, setting up a false something? And guess what his response is? So whatever they're struggling with, if they get to a point where kids are being successful, because
These are adults.
Oh, these are adults. Well, even more so, right?
Yeah.
If what they're doing is getting them to be actionable in the world. So some folks are motivated intrinsically, some folks are extrinsically motivated. As long as they're motivated, as long as they're moving, as Ultimately, you want them to be. What it could be, but that's not.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome back to the neighborhood.
I know. Here can be, spending a couple days with you, like, you know, figuring out the
I was just down.